Hi everyone. Today's topic is about water resources, and the Earth's surface is covered by 71% water. And as you know, water is really essential for life, and we can only survive just a few days without water. Majority of the water resources are in the form of ocean and saline lakes which cover about 97.4%. And from that, only 2.6% is fresh water, which most of them in the form of ice caps and also glacier, which consists about 1.984%. And from that 2.6%, about 0.592% is groundwater, and the other 0.014% is in the form that can be readily accessible fresh water. And from the 0.014%, this is the portion that is available for human to be consumed, which in the form of lakes, rivers, soil moisture, and so on. Water is continuously collected, purified, recycled, and distributed. Water from stream, lake, river will be evaporated, and also through the process of transpiration, and from the cloud will goes back to the earth's surface through the process of precipitation, and this will continuously occurs to form water cycle. The most common water that can be utilized for aquaculture purposes is the availability of groundwater in some area, and in some area that they also use surface water supply, and this type of water is the most common utilized for aquaculture purpose. Whereas in some part of the world, they also use rainfall runoff as water resources in aquaculture. Fresh water can be divided into surface water, groundwater, rainwater, snow melt runoff, and also municipal water. And also salt water can be further divided into ocean, bays, estuaries, and some lakes. Sometimes watershed is very useful, that function to collect water from rain and also snow, that at the end will contributing to the drainage to a stream or river. Watershed maybe it is in the form of large watershed that is combination made up of a combination of many small watersheds. Two important source of fresh water, surface water and also groundwater. So these are the two source of water that mostly used for aquaculture purposes. So surface water comes from lakes, stream and rivers, whereas the groundwater, this also can be used for aquaculture purposes, but then it could be taken from below the earth's surface. The surface water, like lakes and reservoir, can be a good source of water. So lakes and reservoir can be source of water that goes into ponds or through raceways. But then not limited to that, lakes and reservoir can also be used for cage culture, And if you use as cage culture, the effluent can be recycled back to the lake or reservoir via gravity or pumping. And then this large size of lake and reservoir itself, this can be used as natural treatment and will be suitable for reuse where it is acting as a large recirculating water system. The lake and reservoir itself when you apply the cage culture. Sometimes when we use surface water, we have to be careful because at certain area, especially when you have animal production around that area, so the terrestrial animal waste, and sometimes comes from the fertilizer from planting area. So this runoff can goes into the surface water, which is used for aquaculture. So this is really have to be concerned as it is could be bad effect to the aquaculture animal in the pond. And on the other hand, the excessive level of organic and inorganic fertilizer in the pond water itself. So this could also lead to the algal bloom and subsequent oxygen depletion. River and stream is a good source of water supply to the aquaculture activities. But then, because it is rich in the ocean because of the um, flowing, but then one of the main concern is that um, you still need to build the reservoir because sometimes the amount of water flowing in small stream, creek, sometimes will often vary a great deal from season to season, especially during the dry season where you may face problem of not enough water for the culture. So because of that, you need to build a reservoir to collect all these water resources before it flows into your pond. On the other hand, slower and smaller creek and stream tend to change temperature very quickly, so they may become too warm or too freeze to be used for aquaculture purposes. If it's too warm, then you have to be very careful in terms of the oxygen, dissolved oxygen depletion in that water. And if you use a rapidly, it comes from the source of rapidly moving streams, then there is tendency that this water resource carries silt and small sand grain. And when this goes into the pond, so it will become suspended and also will begin to settle, so this will resulting in a sediment layer forming over the bottom of your pond. In the previous slide, you can see the importance of creating dams and also reservoir in order for you to supply more water or a sustainable water supply to your pond area. But then there is trade-off. Even if you create dams or reservoirs, because sometimes even this reservoir is useful for your culture purposes, and in some part, if it's suitable, it can be used as hydropower, and also, of course, you will have enough water for year-round um, for irrigation and also aquaculture purposes. But then, beside that, you also will limit the migration and spawning of some species of fish or aquatic species, and also large losses of water through evaporation and also the flooded in that reservoir. Of course, it will destroy forest and cropland and displace people in that particular area. As in the previous slide, we know that aside from surface water, we also have large amount of groundwater. So about 97% of planet unfrozen fresh water is in the form of groundwater. And this groundwater, it could comes from rain or snow that eventually percolates through the soil. So this type of water, the groundwater, it is in the soil where it is stored or flows according to the gravity through fractures in rocks and areas of unconsolidated sand and gravel. Aside from surface water and groundwater, some area also use municipal water source for aquaculture. But then this is very rare because the cost will be very, very high. So it's happened in for recirculating system adopted in some large cities where other water sources are not available. But then the success rate for the sustainability of this um, aquaculture that use municipal water source is fewer successful stories. The last source of water is runoff water. So this comes from runoff rainwater or also could be from snow melt water. So they will flow across the land, ultimately enter lakes, streams, ponds, and also the ocean. Aside from that, a considerable percentage of runoff water is also available for groundwater recharge. And runoff water is the primary or the main source of water that the aquaculturists also rely on. For the groundwater, if you are aquaculturists that want to use groundwater, then you have to obtain this groundwater through drilling a well into an aquifer. So you could build wells, deep wells. Depends on you, but then you have to be concerned or focus on how to drill the well that will go into the right place, um, the position of the well to make sure that they flow out of the ground under pressure, so it will reduce the need for additional pumping because additional pumping will require high cost for the operation. For marine organism cultivation, aquaculturists can use salt water. Either they create the well or they can pump water um, directly to the aquaculture site to be used um, for cultivating the marine organism. But sometimes there is also option that aquaculturists use artificial sea salt is also increasing um, to be used in aquaculture activities. As in the fresh water, salt water also subjected to any contamination. And the other things is they're highly corrosive So if you want to build marine culture facilities, then you have to pay attention to use special material to avoid the corrosive, and also the other problem of fouling of saltwater pipes by the species, for instance, barnacle, mussel, tunicates, and so on. And this will block the piping system, and it could be a troublesome for certain times.